We are so excited to have Megan with us today. Megan Galla, which is I'm so, I know her by more than one name, so I want to make sure that I'm getting that right. And Megan is one of our wonderful teachers. She teaches, yes, like high school math mostly. I know she has a real passion for pre-algebra, algebra, pre-calculus, and all the ones in between that I might have left out, as well as SAT and ACT math. So I'm just so excited to have her with us today so we can talk about our love of math. And then I've got my questions to make sure I've got them all set and ready to go. These days, some days are whirlwinds. So this is one of
Oh,
those days.
absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad to have you. Thank you so much for coming on
Of course.
and telling us more, about being a tutor and about you and your, beliefs and maybe some other really fun questions that we have in store for us today. So I guess we'll start off with the first one I have. What would you wish like everybody out there knew about, being a math tutor? I know like some times it's still a little strange. Like what exactly does a math tutor do? So could you explain a little bit more to people who might not understand?
Sure. So a math tutor is somebody who is basically a cheerleader. Well, actually, we wear a couple of hats. I'm a cheerleader for my students. I'm an educator for my students. And I'm just somebody who they can rely on for support in case they need anything. I think the hardest thing about being a tutor is always having to consistently know all the maths all the time. I think that that's the
Yeah.
hardest thing about being a tutor, especially with the range of levels that I teach, 7th through 12th grade math. And as you've stated in the beginning here, we have pre-calc, geometry, algebra 2, algebra 1, pre-algebra, SAT math, ACT math, and just trying to remember all of that at all times is probably the hardest thing, but it's a fun job because I get students who really want my help and really value my help. And so I think that that's my favorite part about being a tutor is that I can watch, especially with my one-on-ones, I can watch that student progress and develop in their math career. And even if they even if they say they don't like math, at least I can see them making progress. And so I think that's my favorite part about being a tutor and basically what I do here.
That's really cool. I've had students for many years, and you as well, right? You get to see their progress. It's almost like you're growing up with them, and
Yes.
and it's such a big deal. Like that support. You're not just teaching the math, but you're really building up their confidence. In multiple areas, and being on their side and making them know that you are there for them. So
Absolutely.
just accolades to you for doing that. Um, and just a couple, like, so you've mentioned some of like the wonderful things about being a tutor, like how you've been helping people progress and develop. But what something might be a little bit more challenging? I think you mentioned that like there's a lot of different topics, but is there something challenging for students that you've noticed?
I think the biggest thing in terms of tutoring, you mean?
Yeah, in
I
terms of tutoring.
I think the hardest thing is getting over the hump of asking for help. And that might be a non-traditional answer, but I think that a lot of the students are sometimes scared to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wish more students understood is that there's nothing wrong with asking for help, but getting over that hump is probably the hardest thing. Just admitting that you need somebody else to explain it can be difficult. And I think that for me is the hardest challenge that students have to face when they're coming into tutoring. Because usually, and what I've noticed is when students finally get into the swing of things when it comes to tutoring, when I see them every week or multiple times a week, they're starting to get into that, and they know that I'm there to help support them, and they can ask any question at all. But at first it can be kind of scary. So I think that that's a huge challenge for students to
Yeah,
worry about.
definitely. I could see that, like initially the fear, right? You're somebody who's new, but I mean, even the things you've said, like they come to rely on you. You develop that relationship with them, and they trust you, to give them guidance and to learn from. And a lot of that is like our tutoring relationship isn't just about math, but it's also about connecting with the students.
Absolutely.
So when when you mention asking for help and overcoming that, is there anything you do in particular you feel like that gives them that comfort um, to be able to ask for help?
I First of all, I think my number one thing, especially when I meet somebody new, with it being through Zoom or through an online platform, it can be even more intimidating because you don't know that student. And so one of the biggest things that I make sure that I do within the first couple of times I meet with them is just have them describe their experience with math and tell them that it's okay to say that you don't like math or that it's really hard. Just express how you feel with math. And I ask them about what their hobbies are, what do they like to do outside of math. I know they're not doing math in their free time, that's for sure, but unlike me, I like to do math in my free time. But I getting to know what they like helps alleviate that anxiety of not knowing the person across in the screen, and just trying to come up with different icebreakers,
Mm.
sometimes. And this really, I do a lot with like when I teach my classes, is I like to pose silly questions, just the most random silly questions I could possibly think of. And then they're taken aback, like, what does this have to do with math? And I'm like, absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with math. It's just so I want to know what your answer is. I genuinely want to know. And so it just kind of breaks the ice, kind of breaks the anxiety a little bit, of not knowing who you are, or just like the anxiety of their day. Like sometimes I'll have a student that I've been with for 2 years now, and there's like, I really had a bad day, and they just completely shut down. And so you almost kind of wear like a therapy hat in a way, where you just ask them how their day is going and what happened that day. And I get a lot of students who share all about their day, whether it's good or bad. So I think that also helps with rapport building. And honestly, it's one of my favorite things to do, is to really understand who that student is.
Yeah, I could see like the listening, like you're listening so intently with them and connecting with them and making them feel safe. I mean, you can't learn when you don't feel safe, when you're afraid. Like I've had students tell me that they've had teachers, and this is not every teacher, right? For those of you listening out there, but there've been teachers where they just didn't feel safe to speak up. They wanted to improve, or they knew that they could do better, but they didn't feel like they were in a safe place. It sounds like this is a completely different experience than what you're giving them. You're giving them a safe place to speak. You're being really genuine with them, and like that helps bring down the fear and anxiety so they can actually learn, because you can't learn when you don't feel like you're in a safe place to learn.
Absolutely. And I've had teachers in the past where I've felt that sort of negative vibe from them. And it is really, really hard to concentrate on math when you feel like your teacher is just not on your side. I mean, it makes a world of a difference to have a teacher who, you know, is expressing how much they want you to succeed, versus one that is not as supportive. And so I always make sure that students know that I have an open door policy, whether it be in a classroom or one-on-one. Like if you have any question at all, and it doesn't have to be math related, if you need help organizationally, ask me. I have all these tools that I can give you. Or if you need help on a science project, I mean, I might not know too much about science or anything like that, but I can try to help, or at least point you to a direction with resources. And so, I keep an open door policy with my students. And I hope that's one thing that they can get from working with me, is that I do care. I really, really care about every one of my students, and how they're doing, not just in math, but in life, in their own schooling, as much as possible. So that's what I hope my students get from me.
That's really cool. I mean, I'm a big fan, like just of everything you've said. Like it's not just, I mean, you're taking them from so much, like from where they are, you're meeting them where their needs are. We learn about like Marzanos and, sorry, I'm probably saying the wrong word. I'll come back to it. It'll come back to me. But just the level of like comfort, the level of being feeling safe, and then giving that empowerment. I think that it's like, that ability to see the students change, but also to like reach out for their dreams. It's not
Mhm.
just right. It's not just now. We want to help them now, but we also see so much in them, like so
Absolutely.
much potential as well as so much just who they are right now. We don't even have to talk about the future, but so much in them right now. And it's so nice to see like a teacher on the outside peering in and speaking life into, I think that life into a student, like telling a student like, you are so much more. You are like so much more than your fears. You can lay them down and rest them here because I'm here just to listen. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's just cool. It resonates with me in terms of just, being there. Like I've been there in high school, and it was a roller coaster. And there was times I just wanted someone to listen. And
Mhm.
so while we're supporting them with math, and you're teaching them so many really important like mathematical skills to help them be successful academically, you see the full picture. At least that's what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing from you.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's a part of what makes you feel inspired to teach. Like what is the biggest reason that you want to teach?
I I guess there's a couple different things. I want to show students that math doesn't have to be scary. Math doesn't have to be this anxiety cidden concept or subject that is inconquerable, if that's even a word. I think it is. I don't know. But English is not my forte, as we all know. But I,
But
I,
math is.
yeah, math is I know. But I just know that a lot of students have this terrible math anxiety. And if I can at least help a student to just alleviate that anxiety, I know I've done my job, at least part of my job. And that is so important to me. And when I first realized that I wanted to go into the math field, especially math education, was when I got to tutor. Like in high school, I would like tutor my friends or tutor people that I really wasn't friends with, but they were like, oh, this person's, you know, decent at math. And so I'll ask them for help. And it just felt good that they trusted me enough to come to me for help and that I was able to help them. And that feeling of helping somebody really is like the feeling that makes me want to go back for more. If that makes sense. I just love helping students also gain their self-confidence, like you were saying earlier. Self-confidence is huge when it comes to math, and a lot of students, in addition to not like having math anxiety, don't have the confidence that they need in order to feel like they can move on with math, and building them up is so important, you know.
Yeah, I was just like speechless listening to you because no, it's so important. Like you've hit on some really, really big topics, like the anxiety, the level of that tension inside of you, and then now, okay, the anxiety might be better, but like, do I feel like I'm good enough? Am I
Mhm.
good enough at math? And when you bring up that self-confidence, like there's so many possibilities that they have now because if they're fearful and they're afraid and they don't believe in themselves, that a lot of the doors are closed, like
Absolutely.
STEM jobs, right? As well as there's plenty of other things where just believing that you can do it and being able to overcome that hurdle is a
Mhm.
big piece of your problem solving and cognitive, awareness, and just like all these different things where you can strive and overcome hurdles. And so giving them, that that listening and giving them that dose of self-confidence from the sessions with you. Um, that's, it's really what we're about, or at least I feel like I feel that same way. So it's really what we're about, like making students more aware of who they are and how much we believe in them.
Yeah.
And I totally hear that from you.
Yeah.
Um, so like, is there somebody maybe in like the industry or a mentor that, like you think of when it comes to math? Is there somebody you kind of think of as a role model?
Yes. So I was thinking about this and I was like, who would I, because you work with so many math people and trying to pinpoint who really molded me as an instructor. Not to say that my first time teaching, I was a high school teacher, and I was hired on to be the 10th grade geometry teacher. And so it was my first job out of high school, out of college, excuse me. And I was like completely fresh to this. I had done some college teaching, but it's nothing like your first real, quote unquote, real job, 40-hour a week, all that good stuff. And so I'm going to name drop here. Her name is Diane, and she was the ninth grade algebra teacher. And she took me under her wing, and first of all, I appreciate everything she's done for me because I am somebody who's very inquisitive. I have a lot of questions just because I want to make sure I'm doing the best by my students. I want to do the best for them. And she had been there for a couple of years before me. And so she took me under her wing, answered every question that I had, spent time with me outside of school before school started to make sure that my anxiety of coming to a new school was alleviated. And to me, she was my teacher. And I want to emulate that relationship that I have with her, with my own students. And of course, it's different. I'm teaching math. She was teaching me just different things about the school that I was going into, or, just sharing different resources with me. But she cared about me. She made sure that I was okay. And to this day, I don't work at that high school anymore, but I do still keep in contact with her. It's been now a friendship of 4+ years now. And so I know I can always call her up and ask her any question that I might have, or if there's something that I need to talk out, or she'll do the same thing with me. If she has a project that she wants to run by me so we can hash out details, we do that. Again, an open door relationship, open door policy where I know I can ask any question and not feel judged and not feel like I'm a burden. And I hope that I can emulate that with my own students. And to me, she's been a huge just saving grace with starting my own career. So I would say that she's probably my mentor / just inspirational role model.
That's so cool. And that explains, like, as well as one of the things that you do, and that she's passed that gift on to you and you're able to pass that gift on to your students. So, kudos to her. And
Oh
hopefully she
yeah,
can hear this and all the wonderful things
absolutely.
that you have to say about her.
I hope so. And like her students love her. And I think that was another thing that I mean, I've not heard a single bad thing about her as a teacher. And I just see the relationship that she has with her students. It's just not like any other teacher I had seen before prior to watching her with her students. And so I think that was also really important too. Like, clearly what she's doing is she's doing something right. And so, taking as many tips and tricks from her as possible has really helped me with my career.
Yeah, and definitely your students are gaining so much of that wisdom as well. So I guess, they get so much from you. What do you think that they're going to be like facing? Like, what do you think is the biggest challenge that students are going to be facing, like in 10 years, or even what are they facing like right now? that, that you're trying to help them with? I mean, we talked about a few things like the anxiety and the self-confidence. I know that's been for a while, but isn't there feels like there's might be something different now, or is there anything that's different right now that students are facing?
I think, honestly, I think it's distractions, like
Mm,
outside distractions more so. I mean, there's always going to be difficulties with math. That's
yeah,
just, I mean, there's a lot of rules that students have to work through, and that's just something that they've got to figure out what works best for them in terms of math. But I think truly what a big challenge is nowadays that maybe me or you we did not have to worry about when we were in their age is
yeah,
distractions like their phones or social media can be a huge distractor.
yeah.
Kind of showing my age here, but I didn't have like the iPhones that I had to
Yeah,
worry about in school, or you know so I think that will always be a challenge, and I think it's only going to get worse. 10 years from now, I think there's going to be different technology, different things. And so helping students to organize themselves so that they get everything done is
mm,
important. And like I said before, students need lots of time. Each student needs a different amount of time to really digest and understand math, but I know that it's a significant amount of time. And so if they're distracted with other things, that can kind of take away from their experience and them succeeding. And so I think that that's a big thing that they
that's
have to worry
huge.
about.
It is because like it's running through their head, like
Mhm.
I mean, working with high schoolers, and there's plenty of things already that are running through their heads.
Yeah,
Now you're adding all of this, everything they see, everything they're reading is like bombarding them. And how do they have that quiet? Because math requires a certain zone. Like you need to be in a zone, like a math zone, to really perform at math because you're pushing everything aside. And it's I think it's a nice zone because you just feel like everything's making sense, or you're empowered to make sense of this problem in front of you. But
absolutely.
I feel like if students are constantly distracted, they don't get that opportunity to have that kind of experience.
Mhm.
And it makes math even more frustrating rather than getting that like kind of that aha moment or that light bulb instead.
Yeah, and
So
I like to share with my students, if I notice that a one-on-one is having issues with that, or they're procrastinating, I will definitely share, like, I've got some apps on the phone. Even though the phone is a distraction, I've got apps on the phone that will help you to stay focused. It's a pretty cool app, actually. It's called the Forest app, and
okay.
basically, I don't know if you know, but it's
No,
it's
no, tell me
basic.
more. Yeah.
So it's an app where it sounds so silly, but it's actually kind of rewarding. You set up a timer, and depending on how long of a timer, like if you set 30 minutes or 60 or 90 minutes or whatever, you get to grow trees. And
Oh,
as you don't pick up your phone, because it does track that, like if you go out of the Forest app, it'll your tree will die, because
oh
I
no.
know it's kind of, but it's motivating because you want that tree, and that tree symbolizes that you've gotten an hour's worth of real work in without distractions, at least from the phone.
Yeah.
And so it creates a forest every time that you restart the timer. It adds a tree to your forest, and you can see, like, a week view or a month view of all the times that you stayed focused. To me, it's rewarding because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, my tree. And you obviously are motivated to not have that tree wither, and you're not wanting to go into in stopping that timer at all. So that's just one tool that I give. I'm very much a planner person. I also coach my students on how to write in a planner. And if they don't have a planner, that's okay. Let's just make a planner real quick on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
just listing things in order of how important it is, or due dates wise. I mean, I coach through all of that, and I love it. I love doing that. I just was organizing my own planner, putting washi tape on it and making it look pretty. But you know, anything that I can do to help them stay organized and not as distracted is also something that I love to do as well. Because I know that it's going to affect everybody. It affects me, you being distracted. It's very easy it happens very easily. So if I can help them and give them tips that help me, then at least I've helped them with that. So
Yeah, I know. Like today's meeting, right? I came in and it was like there was so much going on, but then, listening to you, we are able to kind of separate it. I love the trees because that makes me feel like it's peaceful, right?
yes,
It is like it is giving yourself, not only do you get to see it visually, but it's giving yourself back that peace of
mhm,
mind.
absolutely.
And we didn't expect to give all these wonderful tips that Megan's giving. Um, Megan's giving for the session, but she's giving these tips about, how to get more organized, which is such a big part. Like that is a piece of mathematics. Just a side
Yes.
note for myself, like one of the things that I struggled with was, even though I could learn mathematics to a certain level, I realized I got to a cap when I didn't necessarily have study skills or organization skills that would complement everything else that I had been learning. And so, that you're recognizing that and giving them that piece that people might not necessarily associate with math tutoring, like going back to that beginning question that we had, but it's really valuable. Organization, knowing how to study, how to effectively study, and
Yes.
getting your peace of mind so you can really focus, grow in confidence, and let that test anxiety or that anxiety go away. It's a big picture, and you're giving them the tools to do that, which is really, really cool.
It is
So
so important to be organized in math. I mean, and I think we talked about it a little bit before, and if we didn't, we can go back to it. But everybody learns differently,
yes.
and everybody's gonna explain their reasoning differently. But if you can explain it in a way that's organized to you, that already will mentally help you to learn the material better, because
Mm,
you don't have the anxiety of being overwhelmed with for example, like papers everywhere, or not knowing where your notes are. When
yeah.
I'm a huge proponent of asking my students, well, what did you write today in class? So if we do homework, I'm like, okay,
Mhm,
let's go back to your notes. And they're like, why do
mhm.
I need to go back to my notes if you're right here and you're going to help me? I'm like, because because the point of writing notes is for you to go back to. And I don't think a lot of students understand that, or have been taught how to go back to their notes. And so if they have it organized to at least where they know where to find it, that is one less thing to get anxious over. And I know for me, if I can't find something, it just snowballs. And then I get anxious, and then things just kind of go snowball out of proportion. It's just like one of those things. And it does happen. But if I can at least help students to get organized before that happens, then that's one less thing they have to worry about, you know? So that's how I feel. And, being organized when they're writing their work down is another big tip. Don't just write numbers all over the place. Make sure you're labeling everything, all your numbers. When I taught high school, I was really close with the engineering teacher, and we came up with no naked numbers. Always label your numbers. So
Oh, that's great. No, that's very memorable. I'm not gonna forget that
right,
one. No.
exactly. Like
Right.
no naked numbers, and you're like, okay. They're like, okay, so the number five should be trees, 5 trees, and not
Yeah.
five anything else. So that's really important, because it also helps you to understand what you're talking about. What is the question asking you to find? And if you can at least label, you can kind of put together, especially with a story problem, you can put everything together more easily, I think. So yeah.
No, I mean, that's again, that like that level of detail, but I'm hearing, like you're thinking ahead for them
Yeah.
about some of the real essentials that they need. And there's a story about the British cycling team and how they had taken these minute things and changed them from like pillows, just changing the pillow that they were sleeping on, or changing the diet, or changing the clothing that they were using or wearing for cycling. Those minute things gave them like tenfold growth. And
Yes.
instead of always trying to compete to be at the top, by making those changes, they became at the top.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm hearing from you is those minor changes that students might, well, it's not such a big deal if I don't take notes, or yeah, it's not so bad if I don't have a planner, or if my organization isn't that great, or if I don't study, like I can get away with it, right? Everything's
Mhm.
gonna be okay. And then the more like they realize it, like you're bringing it to light, it's like, well, let's just start with these things,
Mhm.
let's look at them. I'm already thinking ahead for you. And then you build that relationship. I'm already caring about you, and this is
Mhm.
what I'm doing for you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, no, I just see it like laid out from the smallest detail. You're so attentive to what they need. um and it's really refreshing. It's really
Oh,
refreshing to see. So,
good.
because
Thank you.
it's that care, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of the care is in the details, those small things that you do. I maybe I'm a little old school that way too, like the little bit of lace that you would, think of, or that cup that, somebody handcrafted. You're doing that same kind of care in the what you're talking about mathematics. It's almost like if you could see it as a artwork.
Mhm.
The care that you're talking about is the details in like pottery or lace or something like that. So, you know what? I hope your students, even if they don't see it now, really appreciate the handiwork of being a kind of a math tutor artist,
Right.
of thinking through all these different things and laying out a plan for their success.
I hope so.
Uh, which, which might bring us to an interesting question. I had this fun question that I think this is really relevant. Like, so I talked about like this handiwork, of like kind of being an artist. Well, if you could take like your math kind of beliefs and thought process, and you could kind of take it from being like this everyday thing, you could just kind of flash it on a board, like a billboard, right? What would you tell people? Like, if you could accumulate everything, I hear so many like values and love and care in what you're saying. Like, if we were talking about details, like we could probably list out hundreds of,
Oh,
maybe even thousands of every single little thing that you've mentioned.
yes.
But if we could pull it back and try to give what would be that big picture or that billboard, because we can't put too much stuff on the billboard. What would you say so people could kind of shine a light? This is what Megan wants for you, or Megan wants to
Well,
say to you.
let's see. Well, I know what I would put. I'm not sure if it kind of encompasses in the math as an entirety, but I know it hits one really big anxiety ridden topic in math, and that is fractions are your friends. I just want that on a billboard. Fractions are your friends. And when I'm teaching fractions, I literally say it, I try to say it once a day. Fractions are your friends. And sometimes if my students are feeling it, if it's not too early in the morning, I'm like, okay, now repeat after me. Fractions are your friends. And they're like, oh my gosh. But something about it's almost like mentally when you take a step back and you're like giving yourself positive affirmations, right?
Right, right.
They tell you all the time, look in the mirror, tell yourself in the mirror something that you want or something that you believe or want to believe in the future. And
Right.
so that's kind of what I'm doing with fractions. Fractions are one of the biggest, scariest, in quotations,
Yeah.
scariest
Yeah.
topics that students just there's a mental block there. And
Right.
so even if it's so small, fractions are your friends. But if you can if you can say that every day and hopefully begin to manifest that and take that with you, that to me, that's good. That's good. And even if fractions are still difficult, I'm not saying they're not difficult, because of course they are, but if you can at least turn them into a positive thing,
Yeah.
then that will help your mental state. And again, going back to what are some things that I can do to alleviate math anxiety? Positive, positive, positive affirmations. Fractions are your friends. Even if you don't believe it, that's okay. Because the more you say it, hopefully the more you believe it. And, in conjunction with having me there to help you will help hopefully in the future. So that would be my billboard. Fractions are your friends.
Oh, and I could see it too. I see the joy in it. Like I really did. I like saw furry fraction friends. Like literally. Like I love the alliteration. Fractions friends.
Uh-huh.
With a little bit in between. We're gonna skip over that part. But no English teachers, don't get after me. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I do. Like that receded all the like it cuts away like the frustration, the darkness, because it is so light and happy, and you just can't help but laugh at like how silly it is, and yet that little bit of joy and that meaningful, like it can turn everything around. When you have such a
Absolutely.
have such a bad day or have such a bad math experience, and then you turn around and see something light, something good in it, and you build on that and you bring that momentum, right? It just takes a little wave and then make it bigger and keep coming back at it, and getting that confidence, right? You can't always ride up the hill on the bike the first time, but if
Absolutely.
every day you keep doing that and you keep working it and you have the mentality that I can,
Mm-hmm.
then I really feel like practice on your friends is like that arrow. It just shoots right at the core of
Mm-hmm.
what people are stressed about. I
Yeah.
mean, I stand behind you.
We'll
If you
make
let
this
me know,
happen.
if you let
We're
me
gonna make this
know, we'll
happen.
get some bumper stickers. It's gonna be a whole thing, you guys. And if you're commenting, if you're into this, comment down below when you see this video that you are in favor of fractions on your friends. We'll get these stickers going, and who knows, we might have a billboard in 2022, or
Hey, maybe we'll have some buttons for the kids' backpacks and everything, Oh man, what a movement. What a movement.
definitely like this is like somebody like you to speak it out loud, to make it happen, and change the dynamics. I think that's one of the things as a teacher, like you like listen and you can share and you can change that atmosphere by caring about your students as much as we're hearing that you do, and that you do. I want to reiterate, we're hearing, but we also know that you do. And so it's such a joy. It's such a joy to see that.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. All right. So wow, time is flying.
I
Can't even
know we're
believe it.
almost at the end there. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so we're just having so much fun. So I just want to ask you, like, is there any question? I think almost like the very first thing that you and I talked about, but is there any question you wish that I asked you? Because I feel like there's so much more I could be asking you. So yeah, tell me, is there one more thing I didn't ask you during the session that I probably should have?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot there. We talked about a lot of good things. We touched upon a lot of really important, lighthearted, but also very serious things in math. Um, I always like to talk about, my favorite, like my core teaching experience, the coolest thing that I did as a teacher. And, maybe that's something that you can ask other guests on the podcast. But I
Sounds good.
always, yeah, I like to talk about my coolest experience. And, what's crazy, and this experience was so cool that it was like before I was even a teacher. So I got the opportunity at my high school to, in 11th grade, was it 11th grade, 11th or 12th grade? I think I did both years actually. We got to do an internship. So this internship was part of my credits to graduate. And so I was able to go out and teach for I think it was like a middle school classroom. And they placed me at an alternative education school where, the students, were placed from a public school environment into an alternative education setting. And so I had very small classes. I think I had maybe 5, 6, 7 student class, which was really nothing like I had ever really experienced because I had a huge high school graduation. It was massive. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. And the greatest thing I got to do was I was teaching surface area specifically. And we got to measure the entire classroom. And I wanted them, I made a project where they measured all the walls of the classroom. They actually got on ladders safely, I promise. And, I had a couple other teachers help me to make sure that this went smoothly. But I got like the okay from the superintendent and everything. So we had some teachers come in and the students got to measure the walls, calculate the surface area, and figure out how much it would cost to repaint that classroom.
Oh, okay.
And so we did some research on different paints and how much it would cost and how much square footage it would cover and how many gallons of paint we would need. And then we got the approval to actually do it. And it was
Amazing.
wonderful because those students were already in an alternative education situation. They didn't thrive in like a general ed environment. And so to be able to bring such a unique experience to them, I got to see a completely different side of them. And they were like, whoa, this is cool. I could do this at my own home, or like ask my mom and dad to do this at our house. I'm like, you absolutely could. And it was something very realistic I was able to bring to them, and then them see their own math work come to light. And that was probably the coolest thing. And that was before I even really decided I wanted to be an educator. And then that right there was like, that was cool. To see those students do the math, but then also see what comes from that. And that will forever just be in my mind as like the coolest thing. I mean, I've done some other cool things as an educator, but that's one that really sticks to me. And that was when I was in 11th grade, and that was just kind of got the ball rolling of like, yeah, I could do this for the rest of my life. This is really, really cool. So I think that's one thing I always like to share.
Wow, and that's so much about what we talked about today. I think it's a great story because it accumulates that transformation that you're bringing with the project that you shared with your students and how they use math to be transformed. I mean, I bet when they looked at it before and when they looked at after, like I could see like the glowing in the expression, the expression is different and they've been empowered, right? They've gone from where they were before to where they are now, like maybe not liking the math, right?
Mm-hmm.
To now seeing the power that math gives.
Absolutely.
And how much it empowered them as well, that they can now take that math and do things with it and change their lives and that there's freedom that they probably just could have done anyways, but they didn't realize that even existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what you're bringing in our conversation today is maybe a lot of things that students don't think about. They assume that it's not possible, or they may not have thought of it. And when you bring it to light, it's really giving them something different, something that's so beneficial to their future. And I can see why, like that kind of thing. And I've got so many other stories that we can share. Made you want to continue with math education and instruct, because gosh, there's nothing better than seeing these kids like transformed, right?
Absolutely. And I always tell my students, you don't have to love math. You don't even have to like math, but as long as you can appreciate it and know that there are going to be times in life where you need it, that's important. I'm not here to, I would love for you to say, oh my gosh, I love math now. And I have gotten some people that are like, oh yeah, that was not so bad. That was great. I liked it. And that's a goal, of course, but my main goal is for students to take away that they don't have to like it, they don't have to love it, they have to appreciate it and know that there are experiences where they will need math. So I
Yeah.
think that that's like a big takeaway for me as an educator, is to share that with my students. They just need to know at least the basic level of just different experiences that they might have to go through where math is involved.
Yeah. And you're giving, I mean, and you might just say it's like, oh, they just, I mean, maybe not at the highest level, and it's appreciation. But bottom line is I hear the gift you're giving them.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's something like we often, or, we in general, a lot of people say in general, like, you don't only take what your knowledge is. You
Yeah.
take your knowledge with you. You can't always take every single object you have with you wherever you go, but that gift that you're not only giving to their mind, but also giving to their like heart and their spirit is something they can carry with them wherever they go. And I bet they'll come back and it's not to your face, but just like, your mentor, like I bet as well, our students really do appreciate all you do, Megan. It's a
Thank
real
you.
gift to have you on board and be one of the teachers here at Tampa Bay Test Prep.
Thank you so
So
much. I appreciate your time and inviting me.
yeah, just it's been fun. I got to hear so many great things from you, and I am just so appreciative of you coming on. Thank you again for everything you do for our students.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for having me. I appreciate it.